Hey guys, how you doing? Britton Frost, professional astrologer, back with another astrological segment on the 12th house. I do these periodically because there's not too much that we can say about the 12th house, but at the same time, there's no limit to things that we can say about the 12th house because it is the house of no limits. And that's what's scary about it, right? They say it's the house of isolation, the house of seclusion, but it's really seclusion and isolation within ourselves and with the realization in mind that we are alone in this life, right? So they say it's about hospitals and asylums because when you go into one of these places, when you're in a vulnerable state, you're not only physically alone and vulnerable, you're mentally and spiritually coming to the realization that you are alone in this life, right? And that is true. We are on our own journeys, our own spiritual journeys through life, and we are on our own path. And hopefully that path is intuitively guided by truth and aimed toward self-actualization in some sense, right? But people come and people go. Sometimes our paths intersect with those of others, and we get to walk side by side with those people. Other times, we simply cross in a more perpendicular way, right? There's no straight path to truth. We can be headed toward the same place, but we have to bushwhack our way through in different ways, right? Because we're carrying different tools, right? So not all of us can get through thick, thorny shrubs. Not all of us can chainsaw trees down, so to speak, out of our way. We have to use our own tools, make best use of them on our truth path, our spiritual path, right? So this realization that we are alone in this life is really a 12th house kind of thing. So I took a few notes about things I want to take note of about the 12th house, and I'll do more of these 12th house videos in the future. Just to remind you, I am a 12th house dominant person. My chart ruler and dominant planet is in the 12th house. And I have other planets there as well. So is my ascendant in the same sign as the rest of my 12th house planets. So I have a nice big stellium in there. But there's balance. I'm 6th house heavy as well. So it's a topic that I always come back to because the 12th house is really that place of no limits, right? Whereas the first 11 houses are the houses of our experience here on Earth. Tangible things that we can experience, that we can touch, smell, taste, hear. Things that we do, right? And things that we can reflect on. The 12th house is where we go to reflect on those things in the greater context of the greater reality. We realize in the 12th house that we and our experiences are just a tiny part of reality because the 12th house is all known and unknown. All things knowable and unknowable. It's the collective unconscious, it's consciousness itself, it's spirituality. It's the place where the laws of language and logic and regular human reasoning don't really apply. You know, it's the system of systems. So this is, just another installment of a 12th house description, right? Before I get on to 12th house notes, this is just a general astro note. If you have your big three all in fire signs, especially like a double Aries with a Sag, you probably have a face tat or will someday get one. Anyway, if you have your Sun and your Mercury both in the 12th house, you're probably a brilliant existentialist poet. You just kind of tap into that flow of the unconscious mind and you can put it down on paper. You can write because you have that Mercury in there, putting some rational structure to your words and everything and to your thoughts. And then you have that sun, that energy that you're projecting, right? And those, it's a very common conjunction to have anywhere. But if you have it in the 12th house, you're probably very good at writing, especially existentialist poetry. I have a friend who's like really into metal music, and he has both of these planets in Aries in the 12th house. And I call his style of poetry metal stentialism. It's like a combination of like metal music and existentialism. You should check it out. _unmeasured on Instagram. If your 12th house ruler is in the 12th house, you are content with your spirituality, and you're content with the unknown, and you are unshockable and untriggerable, and you are a very confident loner. This is a very introverted placement to have, regardless of the sign that it's in. To have your 12th house ruler in the 12th house. It means that, again, whatever sign you have in the 12th house, if your 12th house is in Gemini, then that would be Mercury. If your Mercury would be there, right? And the planet that is there would just give you an avenue, a tool for expression. So in the case of Gemini and Mercury, or Virgo and Mercury, or Taurus or Libra and Venus in the 12th house, then you would have just kind of in a mercurial sense, a rational means of expressing yourself, like through words and language, right? And then if it's the case of Venus, it'd be more the sensory experience and like expression of desires. You're very reserved, but also confident in that way. And in general, you're not shocked by facing the unknown because you're comfortable in your spirituality and you're comfortable learning about and experiencing things that you could not have foreseen, right? So that's where the 12th house, it's what the 12th house deals with, is like, right, self-undoing, it's karma, when karma takes over and gives you the results that you need, not necessarily the ones that you want, but the things that you could not have foreseen or made yourself prepared for. 12th house ruler in the 12th house tends to be very confident in those crazy, otherwise insane and fear fear-striking situations, And then the last thing I'm going to say here is if you have your outer planets in the 12th house, a lot of people born around my time, plus or minus 10 years of me really, have their Uranus and their Neptune pretty closely conjunct, and also Saturn pretty often. I have all three of those planets in the 12th house in the same sign in Capricorn. But a lot of people of our generation do. Now, the outer planets, especially Uranus and Neptune, deal with collective sensibilities. For Uranus, it's more of like realistic sensibilities, tangible, pragmatic approaches to culture, to social grounding and influence and understanding and events. Things that we can conceive of, things that we can experience and understand. And it's kind of our collective sensibilities, the things we agree on. But then the way you inflict change onto those things comes through your house placement, where you have those planets, right? Whichever house they're in. So people born around my time, from 80s through the 90s really, have their Uranus and Neptune pretty closely conjunct and often in the same sign and in the same house. Neptune, all right, less tangible, less pragmatic sensibilities, more kind of the same thing, but regarding dreams and fantasies and how we relate to maybe higher spiritual truth, like through fiction and through entertainment and things like that. How we connect to the unconscious mind. through these less tangible, more abstract things, you know? So Uranus and Neptune are kind of playing the same game. Uranus is more about like common sense. Neptune is more about abstraction. But the house you have these places in is how you are different from everyone else who may have those things in the same signs, right? And so if you have your Uranus and your Neptune in the 12th house, it means that you are quite bulletproof against social and cultural conditioning because you have sort of a bird's eye perspective on what's happening socially, culturally, in entertainment, in politics, in things that have something greater, something of a more spiritual, metaphysical sort of grounding that's like guiding them. You're able to see those patterns a lot better if you have these planets in the 12th house, right? Because you're experiencing the same things as everyone else, but remember, your birth chart is more about your perspective. So to have outer planets, those things, those places where you relate to people of your generation in the 12th house, you have a limitless perspective on the same things that everyone else is going through alongside you, right? So this results in sort of a confident bird's eye perspective as to what is really going on. You're able to see the patterns of the cultural conditioning that's being forced onto everyone else. You're kind of bulletproof against that, remember? Uninfluenceable. For all the right reasons, but this can get overwhelming, right? If you have some tough aspects to these planets, then it can be overwhelming, and you can face situations of really being affected even more deeply than everyone else by certain cultural events and social influence and things like that. But the difficulty doesn't come from, oh, it's like, I don't understand what's going on. It's like, no, you understand what's going on. If you're a more sensitive type, maybe you have a Pisces moon or something like that. And you realize that you're falling victim to it, right? So it can be very tough. But nevertheless, it gives you a more objective perspective on the greater social and cultural and really metaphysical and spiritual reality. And it comes from that place of being unshockable, untriggerable, being a confident loner. Like I said, having 12th house ruler in the 12th house can really help with this, and being more content with your spirituality, right? But how it actually affects you in the end depends on you. Depends on how you're filtering through all that more consciously and actually imposing yourself onto the landscape and consciously dealing with it. Again, be stoic. Be in control of yourself. That's the only thing you can control at the end of the day. And you realize this, especially if you have a lot of 12th house stuff going on, because you see reality more so for how it is, even if it affects you emotionally in a more negative way. So anyway, those are a few thoughts today on 12th house placements and, just a different perspective on the 12th house. More on that to come later on. Until next time, thanks for watching.